literal first day on the job. It's trial by fire.
How do other people around the world worship the same God?
How is the gospel going forward in different contexts?
Are you still going to live boldly for him?
And all Christians are called to serve. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Courageous Conversations podcast. Here I am with my friend and coworker in that order, Tyler Salyer. So, Mr. Salyer, welcome to the Courageous Conversations podcast.
I tell you what, I always wondered what this would be like, you know?
Now you're getting to have the experience.
Dream come true, sir.
And you probably hear us through the wall because these walls connect to your office. And
that is true.
Yeah, and because we're loud. Lots of fun, awesome energy happening in here. And so today on the podcast, what we thought would be great to discuss is our annual mission trips to Ecuador.
Yes, sir.
And you had the opportunity to go on that trip for the first time. And fun fact, it was actually his literal first day on the job.
Yeah.
So it was the first day on the job, go down to Ecuador, like it was trial by fire. Like it was.
Absolutely.
But I would love for you just to share a little bit about that trip, kind of your impressions as a first timer. And now this year, probably when this podcast airs, you will be leading that trip.
That's right.
So what was that trip like for you as a first timer? Impressions, initial thoughts, all of those things.
Sure. And so first of all, appreciate you having me on. I feel like this is a huge deal. Thank you, sir. Going down to Ecuador, first thing, like you said, is a first day on the job. There was actually an earthquake.
There was.
Within the first few hours
yes.
Of us arriving and first few days on the job. Not sure what kind of sign God's trying to give us with that one, but we were going to roll with it.
We pushed through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we pushed through.
For me, I've been on so many different short-term mission trips. And honestly, I think I've been on somewhere between 14 and 16 as I tried to count them up.
Yeah.
And Ecuador was phenomenal. The reason I love those short-term trips is because you really get to see the way different people worship the Lord in different countries and in different ways outside of what we are just so used to here in America. Going down to Ecuador, though, you're going down there with a bunch of high school kids that you don't know, and they don't know you, and you're their new principal and everything like that. So you arrive, you're in this town in the middle of a jungle.
Yes.
You're with these kids, and then you're able to just start seeing people arrive that are affiliated with Jungle Kids for Christ.
Yes.
You're able to see their passion for the Lord. You're able to see just how appreciative they are of people from the United States being willing and wanting to come in to see what they do, to support them. Mm-hmm. You're able to see kids who were I would say apprehensive at first.
Oh, yes.
I mean, they don't know what they're getting into. They know that it's so outside of whatever they're comfortable with here in the United States. I mean, you've got popcorn soup. If nothing else,
yes.
It starts off with that.
Yes.
And you've got monkeys. You've got rain. You've got all these other crazy things that are wildly different than what we have here. Different sleeping accommodations. So you're automatically pulling these kids out of their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And it becomes very apparent really quickly whether or not a child is there to serve the Lord and for the right reasons, or whether or not they're there for, selfish pictures or just selfish ambition. And man, I was very impressed with the fact that our kids, every single one of them, had the right heart. It was not I, but Christ in everything that they did, in their attitudes, in their work ethic and everything. So we get there. We go to the home, the school that was there. We spent, the way I would describe it would be half the day doing like a high school VBS type thing.
Yes.
Breaking the kids into groups, having our kids get to know them, develop relationships with them very quickly through them being open and honest about the way that the Lord has worked in their own lives. And then hoping that the kids would start to do the same. And throughout the course of the week that we're there, I think we saw that. I think we saw kids begin to open up. We saw our kids honestly start to take more of a leadership role, whether it was leading small groups, leading Bible studies, things of that nature. And then the afternoon, being able to do work around the house or the homes themselves that were there in the school, being able to support them with literally anything that they needed done.
Yeah.
And what was so awesome to me was to see our kids being willing to embrace that work and really see that you're not just working for yourself. You're not there for a vacation. You're not there for the Instagram pictures. You're there really to help support the work the Lord is doing in Ecuador through Jungle Kids for Christ and support that organization.
Well, and it was just, I mean, that trip that we were both on was so special, not just because of the earthquake. Literally happened 28 minutes into your tenure as a Briarcrest principal.
Yeah.
Like you rolled onto the clock at midnight and 28 minutes later, the room starts shaking.
Yeah.
And I remember you woke up and you go, well, that was interesting.
Well, it was.
Yeah, I mean,
never had that happen before.
So it was less than a 4.0. I mean, nothing fell or anybody.
Right.
But I mean, it felt like a rumble. I'd never been through an earthquake. It was quite the experience. But you're right. Like watching these students and some of them, even by their own admission, like you ask them, why'd you come on this trip? They might have said, I don't know.
Yeah. Or my mom signed me up for it.
Yeah,
there were some that was truly.
Yeah.
It's like my parents pushed me to go do this.
Yes.
It wasn't something I had a heart for.
Yeah, but none of them regretted being there.
Oh, no.
And I think, because you're talking about being on between 14 and 16 mission trips. Yeah. Is that normally the way, because you've led a lot of those trips, is that normally the way that it plays out? You've got people that maybe sign up and they're a little hesitant to sign up, but they did. So they don't even really know what they're getting themselves into. They're coming in with maybe mixed emotions about the whole thing. And you just see the Lord soften their heart. Is that a pattern you normally see on these trips?
One super interesting characteristic that I didn't even pay attention to going into this trip. It's the first trip I've been on where it's all high school kids.
Yeah.
Usually it's a mixture of adults. They're going for different reasons and kids or their families and they're going together, those kind of pieces. Usually it's much more adult heavy on that piece. And sometimes on those adult trips, you see a lot of selfishness.
Yes.
You see a lot of, hey, I'm older than this leader, or, oh, I'm an adult too. I don't necessarily have to do what they're telling me to do, as opposed to the trip that I experienced in Ecuador, where you have these kids that are not just great kids. They're super respectful. They're there to, and I think a lot of it has to do with the job that you and my predecessor, Eric, did with the kids of setting the expectation for you're going to serve. Forget whatever you're thinking you're going to do. The Lord's going to put you in these situations and have you do things that are totally out of your comfort zone, and you need to be willing to say, yes, Lord.
Yes.
So I would say that the heart of our trip as a whole, I would say that's not reflective of most short-term trips.
Yeah.
And, hopefully that's very characteristic of all of our Briarcrest trips there.
Well,
and the kids did awesome.
Well, and I think that last year, our trip was my 4th trip down there. And every year I've seen the same thing of just these students that they recognize it's not about them.
Right.
It's the John 3:30 passage where John the Baptist is looking at Jesus and saying, he must increase, but I must decrease. And when we've seen our students and our staff, because me and you and a couple other staff members got to be the ones that kind of shepherded this trip, and we just see the Lord soften our hearts towards just something that is so, before I went on this trip, my first year, 2018, I did not know that this little town in the jungle of Ecuador even existed, right? It was all new and it's so uncomfortable. And as when it rains, you can't hear anything because of the way that the roof, it's just a totally different experience. And it's not wrong. It's just different, but yet you see the same gospel going forward. And let me ask you this. I just thought of this question, but in a lot of ways, we've likened this Ecuador trip to going to kind of the Briarcrest of the Ecuadorian jungle. Yeah. There's a lot of overlap between our DNA here at school and their DNA down there. Working at the school, what did that mean to you as a principal? Like you getting to see kind of Christian education in the jungle, but yet it's the same thing we're trying to do here. What did that mean to you just as a high school principal?
What I love to see is it was my first opportunity to be around a bunch of high school kids that I go to school with, that we can all be open with our faith.
Yeah.
We can all be very open about, what's the Lord doing in our lives. We're able to have really direct conversations about those kind of things. And then not only that, so we're having those conversations, we're also able to see how the school itself is doing the exact same thing.
Yes.
And I think in a lot of ways it opened our kids' eyes to remember that it's not just an American God, that, he's the God of the world.
Yes.
And how do other people view him? How do other people worship him? How do other people do discipleship even in that way? Yeah. And so, no, I think that was a great experience for everybody.
Yeah. And that, it's just, it gives you a bigger picture of God, right? Like the God of the nations, not just the God of East Tennessee. And clearly God's doing amazing stuff here and locally, right? Like we don't want to skip over like doing local missions and partnering with organizations in town, right? But like at the same time, it's just a totally different, it's a paradigm shift in a lot of ways. And so, the next question I ask you, so someone who you've done, more trips than I have. So maybe we've got a listener, maybe it's a high school student or a college student or a parent even, who is intrigued by the idea of an international missions trip, short-term mission trip, what would be your encouragement to them to really consider, like, why should they prayerfully consider taking the plunge and spending a week and a half in somewhere that is totally unfamiliar, just serving internationally?
Sure, it's a great question. I think one of the biggest reasons that I would say or encourage everybody to try to go on some kind of international mission trip in their life is to see, how do other people around the world worship the same God?
Yeah.
You have to go with the mindset of you're not going as savior. You're not going to try to save somebody in a foreign country.
Yeah.
You're going to be obedient to the calling the Lord's put on your life. You're going to be obedient with what he said in his word that we should do about carrying his word to all nations, carrying the gospel to all nations. In those pieces, there's always going to be some hesitation, because no matter where you go, even if you go to Europe, it's going to be different.
Yep.
It's different than what we experience here in America. And I think everybody needs to have the experience of getting out of their comfort zone, whether it be in that foreign country piece, and I do hope everybody takes that step, or even just like we do on our Mission 1-8 day, where we're going from Eads, Collierville, Germantown into inner city Memphis.
Sure.
Just to see, how do different people worship the same God that we worship?
And how is the gospel going forward in different contexts,
Yeah.
right? It's the same gospel, but totally different context. And you're talking about, I was, as you were talking, I was thinking Revelation 7:9, and John writes, "And this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, all tribes, peoples, languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb," the Lamb being Jesus, capital L there. Like, that's what you see. Like, you're down there and you're like, wow, like this is a 17-year-old student who's coming alive in his faith in a totally different context.
Yeah.
Fun story about one trip to Ecuador. This was a number of years ago. Went down there, and there was this guy named Carlos, and Carlos worked at the school that we work at, and he was one of the staff members. Carlos did not speak any English, and I do not speak any Spanish. But I learned that Carlos had recently given his life to the Lord, probably a year or two earlier. And so Carlos and I, he was on the landscaping crew, so I was planting some stuff, and he was pointing, and we were talking, and by talking, I mean kind of grunting and smiling, and there was not much actual communication verbally. But I was hearing his story through the missionaries, and they were telling me about, like, Carlos and what the Lord was doing and where he was moving next. Well, Carlos, the next night, came over and ate dinner with our team. Now, we stayed at a different hostel than the one we stayed at with you. It's the one with the pool. But Carlos and I are sitting next to each other, and he looks at the pool and he goes, "Baptized." And he points at the pool. And what the missionary says is that he wants you to know that's where he was baptized a couple months ago after he gave his life to the Lord. And you're just like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, that it's so amazing that the same gospel that we talk about in Sparks Chapel or in classrooms, or, as we're in the hallways, is going forward in the hallways, so to speak, of Antioch Christian School in Ecuador. And so, with that being the case, you just begin to see more of what God is doing. Now,
Absolutely.
As this episode is released, most likely you or I will be, and we actually overlap. Our trips overlap,
Which is great.
Yeah, and by overlap,
We'll see
I
you
mean
in the airport.
Yeah, by overlap, I mean you'll be in the waiting area to board the plane that we wrote down, and we'll see you from the other side of probably an 8-inch window, because we got to do that last year.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Exactly like that.
There was lots of noises, but we couldn't hear each other because it was soundproof. So we imagined those noises. But how can people be praying for our trip? Maybe it's alumni, because we've been doing this trip for 15 years, right? Or probably longer than that at this point. So there are, over 100, probably at this point, we're pushing 200 students who have done this trip. And so how can they be praying? How can just the Briarcrest family be praying? How can just people in general be praying for our trips as they hear this episode?
Sure. I think that's a great question. I feel like I've talked a lot about us going on mission trips and kids going on mission trips to be able to see how different other people experience the Lord. And so that is a big piece, right? We want to be able to learn and broaden our horizon of what does worship look like? What does the presentation of the gospel, the same gospel, look like in different cultures? At the same time, I think we continue to pray that it's not I, but you, Lord, as you said, that we're going for the right reasons. I think that we also sit here and when we are going to these places, yes, absolutely. We're looking at how different people worship the Lord, but we're also looking at how can we support these people that are there?
Yes.
Pray for the missionaries and those that have given their lives to an overseas mission. Yeah. How can we support them? How can we encourage them? And then I would also say that for those that go on these trips, that when they return, that they are bold with what the Lord has done in their life and what they saw God doing while they were away. Because what typically happens, and I know we saw this on our trip, is that each night we would meet together and we'd have a worship worship time and a share time.
Yeah.
And people were just so overcome with emotions about what they saw the Lord doing and decisions that they needed to make for their life. We even saw a young man give his life to Christ on our trip last year.
Yep.
And that all's great. And we love that. And we want to celebrate that and rejoice in that. But you got to come home at some point.
Absolutely.
But you have to return.
Yeah.
And then upon your return, are you still willing to live with this newfound boldness, this refreshed fire inside your life? So to me, that's one of the biggest prayer requests, is that it's great if God did something amazing, or if you saw the Lord doing something amazing when you were away. But when you come here and you're back around your family, your friends, those that didn't go on that trip, are you still going to live boldly for him?
Yeah. Well, and that gets at the whole idea of like courageous conversations. The name of the podcast is like, there might be some conversations that these students need to have when they get home, or just a way to live courageously because God has changed them. And that's the thing too, is, and you've done this a bunch of times. You come home, it's hard to describe what you experienced on that trip to anybody who wasn't with you. You can describe it, but having not lived through it, it becomes a deal where like you can feel sometimes like they just don't see it. But yet at the same time, if you live courageously for Jesus when you come home, you can see it through that person. You can see something tangibly is different.
Yeah.
And so, no, I'm very much looking forward to these trips this summer. We are taking 40 students, which is about 8% of our high school is going to be going on these trips. And many of them are underclassmen. So like, this is something that can continue to kind of percolate our culture. Yeah. So any last encouragement maybe for our Briarcrest families? So my oldest is now, she's in the middle of middle school. And so we're getting to the age where we're thinking about serving as a family and what that can look like to be intentional with that, maybe short term, but definitely something locally. What would be your encouragement to anyone who is just looking at this through the parental lens of, all right, I want to get my kids uncomfortable as I get uncomfortable, and us have a shared experience of serving the Lord together? Any word of encouragement for that?
I think that you can do a lot of really easy steps here first.
Yeah.
If you're hesitant to go international right away, then look at being able to go down to Calvary Rescue Mission.
Yes.
Look at being able to serve at Orange Mom Outreach Ministries.
Yes.
Look at these other places that don't just require you to give. And not to say that that's bad, right? Like we want to support our coat drives and all these other things and our offerings, but to be able to get your kid out of their comfort zone and get them to actually actively serve. Look for that widow.
Yeah.
Look for the person that they can serve, help mow grass or whatever other piece. When they look at the international mission trips, obviously look at the local churches and whatever churches they're affiliated with. Places like Briarcrest are great because we offer these to our students, and it's a great shared experience.
Yes.
And there is an expectation for them to come back and to share exactly what they experienced through like our chapels.
Yeah.
Like we have an Ecuador chapel,
Yes.
not just at the high school level, but also at the younger levels as well. I think with everything, it just comes down to saying, yes, Lord.
Yeah.
God, if he's put that desire on your heart for a family to maybe this is something you need to do, you need to prayerfully consider it. Prayerfully look at what kind of opportunities has the Lord put in front of you. Yeah. And even if you don't see those right away, if that's what he's called you to do, then look for it. He has something he wants you to do, and there's some other opportunity out there for you.
Well, and all Christians are called to serve.
That's right.
And it's not because God needs us. God could make this table literally do whatever he needs the service act to be. But it's because he wants to use us in his plan to further his gospel. And we get to be a part of, we get to see that take place. And the thing I love, so we just read a minute ago, and I'll end on this, unless of course you have any last words you'd like to add, but I'll end with this. You've got the idea of John 3:30, he must increase, but I must decrease. When I'm on those mission trips, I'm reminded, especially as I watch our students, I'm reminded of the gospel as they go and they kind of give of themselves to serve others. And we get a small, teeny tiny bit of a taste of what it's like to leave somewhere that is comfortable, leave home for the purpose of serving, which is exactly, literally what Jesus Christ did for us. Yeah. And so I think that is just a picture of the beauty of the gospel that we actually get to not only hear about, but actually get to experience kind of in our core as we go and serve. So any last words on international missions, any last words of encouragement, any last words on prayer?
Yeah. So the last piece about going on a mission trip that I think is super important, I think a lot of people are afraid to do it because they don't know the language, or they feel like that, hey, I'm not a Bible scholar, I'm not a preacher, and I don't want to be in that kind of setting and ruin it for anybody. Now, God has given everybody some kind of unique gift, even if it's just kindness kindness towards kids, even if it's being able to move a paint roller up and down, there is something on each trip that you can do with the gifts that God has given you. The other thing that I will say is to continue to pray for those that are out there that are full-time missionaries. When it says the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, think about how few workers that you know, that I know, that are full-time missionaries out there. These kind of trips, also things like the monthly donations, the letters, the emails, it means something. Pray for these people, that they will continue to be refreshed and that God will continue to send more workers into the harvest.
Well, and I've learned too, as we take these short-term trips, sometimes, we go with the intention of serving and we don't realize we're actually kind of being an encouragement to the missionaries.
Absolutely.
Because they just get to hear from us and spend time with us, and we come in with all this energy. And I've heard them say, like, we feed off of that because, you're there for a week and you get all the adrenaline and you're excited and you have all these plans. You're there it's just doing ministry in general. It can be tiring. And so knowing that we might be blessings in unexpected ways, but also know that the Lord is blessing us through that as well. Yeah. And so, hey, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having
We're going to make it happen again soon. But I want to thank everyone, our viewers especially, and our listeners for being with us and joining us here on this latest episode of the Courageous Conversations podcast. And we hope to see you again here soon.